Ethan Carter stood at the edge of the wide ceremonial hall, trying not to move too much or make any noise. His palms were damp and the collar of his uniform felt tighter with every breath he took. The starbase orbiting the crimson planet of Vera was larger than anything he had ever seen before. White metal arches curved across the ceiling, light panels glowed like artificial suns, and the air smelled faintly of some alien spice that he could not name. Today was not a day for mistakes. His commander had told him again and again that humans had to look respectful, professional, and silent. They were here as guests. The Veran Empire had agreed to meet Earth's envoys to discuss peace, but trust between the two species was fragile. One wrong move could turn this into war. Ethan knew all of this, yet his nervous heart kept pounding like a drum. He was not even an important officer. He was a young aide, barely trusted to carry documents and deliver messages. Still, he stood among the delegation, straight-backed, while alien nobles entered the hall in lines of shimmering robes. At the far end, the music changed. Everyone turned to look. That was when she appeared. Princess Lysera of Vera walked into the chamber with a slow grace that made the air feel heavier. Her robe was woven with threads that caught the light, shifting colors from silver to blue as she moved. A faint crown of crystal rested above her brow, and her long hair shimmered like liquid night. But it was not just her beauty that froze Ethan. It was her presence. She carried herself like someone born to rule. But there was something more, something almost fragile in the way her eyes scanned the room as if she wanted to see beyond the politics. Ethan's throat went dry. He told himself to look down, to focus on the floor, to be invisible. That was his job today, stay quiet. Do not draw attention. Do not embarrass his people, the announcer's voice echoed. Presenting Her Highness Princess Lysera of the House of Vera. The princess stopped before the human delegation. Her guards stood behind her, tall and silent, their armor gleaming under the lights. The alien empress herself was not here, but her daughter carried the weight of an empire. The leader of the human envoy stepped forward to greet her. His words were calm, careful, and rehearsed. Ethan tried to breathe slowly, but his chest felt locked. Then, for reasons he did not understand, the princess's gaze shifted. Her eyes, bright as stars reflected in water, landed on him. On Ethan, the moment stretched too long. His mind raced. He had no script, no training for this. He thought he should bow, but his body froze. He thought he should say nothing, but his lips moved before he could stop them. You look gorgeous. The word slipped out like an accident, soft but clear enough to echo in the silent chamber. Ethan's blood turned to ice. Every alien noble stiffened. Guards' hands twitched toward their weapons. Even the human officers turned in shock, their eyes wide. The hall fell into complete silence. Ethan wanted the floor to open and swallow him whole. He had just insulted royalty. No, worse. He had spoken with casual familiarity to the princess of an empire that might decide humanity's fate. But then something impossible happened. Princess Lysera's cheeks, pale silver in color, glowed faintly pink. Her eyes widened, and for the first time since she entered, her perfect royal calm cracked. She blinked once, then leaned the tiniest bit closer. Say it again, human. Her voice was soft, almost like a command, and almost like a request. Ethan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He was too stunned. The princess of an empire had just blushed because of something he said. And now she wanted to hear it again. The silence in the hall broke into whispers. Some aliens muttered in disbelief. The human commander's face turned pale. Ethan could hear his own heart hammering so loudly he was sure the guards could hear it too. He swallowed, but he could not speak again. His courage had already betrayed him once. To repeat it would feel like stepping off a cliff. Princess Lysera tilted her head. There was curiosity in her eyes, almost amusement, and maybe something else, something Ethan could not understand. But before either of them could speak again, the chief human envoy cleared his throat sharply and forced the ceremony to continue. The introductions moved on. Ethan stepped back into the line, trying to disappear, but he could feel Lysera's gaze brush across him more than once. Later, when the hall emptied and the talks continued behind closed doors, Ethan remained outside with the other aides. He leaned against a pillar, his stomach twisted with dread. He replayed the moment over and over. You look gorgeous. How could he have said that? It was unprofessional, reckless, humiliating. He imagined the reports already being written. Human aid disgraces delegation. Maybe he would be sent home in shame. Maybe worse, but then he remembered her face. The faint glow of her cheeks. The softness in her voice. The way she said, "Say it again." He shook his head. Impossible, she was a princess. He was nobody. A voice broke his thoughts. "You are brave to speak so freely." Ethan turned. His heart nearly stopped. Princess Lysera stood only a few steps away without her guards, her robe trailing softly across the floor. Ethan straightened so quickly his back almost snapped. "Your Highness, I didn't mean—" She raised a hand, silencing him. "Do not fear. You did not insult me." He blinked. "I didn't." She gave a faint smile. "No one has ever spoken to me like that. They use words like radiant, exalted, divine, but you said something simple, honest. It was—" She paused, searching for the word. Unexpected, Ethan's voice shook. "It was a mistake, Princess. Perhaps," she said, tilting her head. "But it is a mistake I would hear again." He stared at her, unsure if she was teasing him or testing him. But her expression was not cruel. She looked curious, almost human. Ethan wanted to say it again, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he bowed quickly. "Forgive me, Princess. I should return to my post." She studied him a moment longer, then gave a small nod. "Very well. But I will remember you, human." She turned and walked away, her robe catching the light like rippling water. Ethan stood frozen long after she was gone. That night, the starbase lights dimmed to simulate evening. Ethan sat alone in his quarters, staring at the metal ceiling. He knew he should sleep, but his thoughts were restless. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face again, the surprise in her eyes, the blush on her cheeks, the quiet command in her voice. "Say it again. Human." He whispered the words to himself in the dark, and for the first time since arriving at the starbase, he smiled. The next morning brought more tension. Humans and Varans gathered again in the council chamber, discussing trade, borders, and alliances. Ethan carried notes, delivered data tablets, and tried to stay invisible, but he felt her eyes on him. Whenever he glanced up, Princess Lysera seemed to be watching him, even while speaking to her advisors. She would look away quickly, but not quickly enough. Ethan tried to ignore it, but a strange warmth grew in his chest. Something dangerous, something he knew he should not feel. When the council recessed, Ethan slipped into a side corridor to clear his head. The walls hummed with the sound of hidden machines. He pressed his hand against the cool metal and tried to breathe. Then a voice spoke behind him. "You still have not said it again?" He spun around. There she was, alone once more, her crystal crown catching the corridor lights. "Princess," he began. She stepped closer. Her eyes studied him with a mix of curiosity and something softer. "Tell me, human, do you see me as gorgeous?" His heart thundered. He knew the danger of this moment. If anyone overheard, it could be used against him or against her. Yet standing there face to face, he could not lie. "Yes," he whispered. "I do." For a long moment she was silent. Then she smiled, small but real. "Strange," she murmured. "No one has ever spoken to me this way. Not as a princess, but as myself." Ethan swallowed hard, his throat tight. He wanted to say more, but footsteps echoed down the corridor. Guards approached. Lysera straightened, her calm royal mask sliding back into place. She gave him one last look, a flicker of warmth in her eyes. Then she turned and walked away. Ethan pressed his back to the wall, trying to steady his breath. He knew his life had just changed in ways he could not yet imagine, and all because of one mistake. The starbase's days felt longer than they should have. Artificial lights rose and dimmed in steady cycles. But for Ethan Carter, time seemed stretched, pulled thin by the weight of what had happened. He tried to focus on his duties, carrying messages, preparing documents, serving the human delegation in quiet efficiency. Yet his mind returned again and again to the same memory. The princess's soft blush, her words, and that secret moment in the corridor when she asked him to say it again. He knew he should forget it. He was a junior aide, unimportant, replaceable. She was a princess of an empire that had ruled for centuries. Their paths should never cross again in anything beyond formal greetings. And yet, somehow, she found him. The second day of talks was heavier than the first. Arguments broke out over trade rights, mining zones, and border patrols. Ethan sat in silence at the edge of the chamber, watching human leaders speak with tense voices, while the Varen nobles responded with cold formality. Every sentence was like a blade, sharpened by suspicion. But then her gaze would find him. He tried to pretend not to notice, but when Lysera's eyes lingered on him across the chamber, it was impossible to ignore. Each time the same warmth stirred inside him, a dangerous warmth. When the council finally recessed for a short break, Ethan slipped away to a smaller service hall, hoping to clear his head. He carried a stack of data tablets against his chest, but his hands trembled slightly. He feared his thoughts would betray him on his face. And then she appeared. "Human," Lysera's voice called softly. Ethan nearly dropped the tablets. He turned, and there she was, her silver-blue robe trailing behind her, her crystal crown glowing faintly under the hall's white lights. She was alone again, though he knew her guards could not be far. "Your Highness," he said quickly, bowing his head. "If someone sees us, they will see nothing," she interrupted gently. "I told my guards I wished to walk alone." Ethan swallowed hard. "That is dangerous, Princess." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Perhaps, but I wish to speak with you." He froze. "Me? Why?" She tilted her head, her long hair shimmering. "Because you speak in a way no one else dares. Tell me, human, what is it you see when you look at me? Not the crown, not the robe, not the titles, only me." Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to choose his words carefully, but her eyes held him, demanding honesty. "I see someone," he said slowly, "who feels alone, even when the hall is full, someone who carries a weight no one else understands, someone who deserves to hear that she is more than a symbol." Lysera's eyes softened. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "And still you call me gorgeous?" He felt his face flush. "Yes." For a moment silence hung between them. Then she laughed quietly, the sound like soft bells. "Strange human. You speak as if you know me better than my own court." "I don't," he said quickly. "I only speak what I feel." She studied him for a long time, then nodded. "Perhaps that is why it matters." Before he could answer, a shadow moved at the end of the corridor. Ethan stiffened. 2 alien nobles were approaching, their sharp eyes glancing in his direction. Lysera's expression hardened. With the poise of royalty, she stepped back and turned away, her mask of calm sliding into place. "Return to your duties, human," she said loudly, her tone formal. The nobles bowed to her as they passed, and Ethan lowered his gaze. But as she walked away, she let her hand brush against the air, a silent gesture almost like a promise. By the end of that day, the whispers had already begun. Inside the human delegation's quarters, Ethan's commander, Colonel Reeves, fixed him with a hard stare. "Carter, what exactly did you say to the princess yesterday?" Ethan's mouth went dry. "Sir, I didn't mean anything disrespectful." "Answer the question," Reeves cut in. Ethan swallowed. "I called her gorgeous, by mistake." The colonel's eyes narrowed. "By mistake? You realize what kind of insult or scandal that could cause? The Varens could take it as mockery. They could accuse us of trying to charm their royalty. Do you have any idea how fragile these talks are?" "Yes, sir," Ethan whispered. Reeves leaned closer. "Then hear me clearly. You will stay away from her. No conversations, no mistakes. You will not look in her direction unless spoken to formally. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." But Ethan's heart twisted, because even as he spoke, he knew he could not keep that promise. The following day proved the colonel's fears correct. During a banquet arranged to celebrate progress in the talks, Lysera entered the hall in a gown woven with living light. Every noble and officer bowed as she passed, but when her eyes found Ethan, a faint smile touched her lips. It lasted only a second, but it was enough. A murmur spread through the alien delegation. Whispers darted like arrows. One noble leaned to another, suspicion clear in their gaze. Ethan felt the weight of it pressing against him, but he could not look away from her. Later that evening, while the banquet continued, Ethan slipped into a service corridor to breathe. He told himself he had to stay hidden, had to stay silent. Yet again, fate brought her to him. "You hide often, human," Lysera said softly. He spun, startled. She stood there with only one guard at a distance, her face lit by the glow of the corridor lights. "I don't hide," Ethan said quickly. "I just don't belong in those halls." Her gaze softened. "Perhaps neither do I." They spoke in hushed tones away from curious eyes. She asked him about Earth, about what humans valued, about why he had called her gorgeous. Ethan explained beauty as he knew it, not in crowns or power, but in kindness, in truth, in the courage to be seen for who you are. She listened with fascination. "In my world," she said quietly, "beauty is measured in bloodlines, in victories, in wealth. But you speak as if beauty is something deeper." "It is," Ethan said firmly. "And you have it." Her eyes glimmered. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, almost like a whisper meant only for herself, she said, "No one has ever told me that before." Before Ethan could reply, the guard stepped closer, reminding them of the danger. Lysera gave Ethan one last lingering look, then turned away, her robe sweeping the floor. But the whispers had grown. By the next morning, rumors had spread across both courts. Some alien nobles accused humans of plotting to seduce the princess to gain leverage. Some human officers warned Ethan that he was being watched, and not kindly. The air in the starbase grew heavier with every hour. Tension buzzed in every corridor. Finally, the storm broke. Ethan was summoned to a private chamber. Inside, a circle of Veyran officials waited. Their eyes were sharp, their expressions cold. His commander stood beside them, face grim. One alien noble spoke first. "You have spoken words of undue familiarity to Her Highness. Do you deny this?" Ethan's voice was steady, though his heart pounded. "I meant no disrespect." "Do you deny it?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "No." The nobles exchanged dark glances. One of them hissed softly. "Humans seek to bind our princess with false words. It is manipulation." "That is not true," Ethan said quickly. "I spoke honestly. Nothing more." The chamber filled with sharp voices. Some demanded punishment. Others muttered about sending him back to Earth in disgrace. His commander said nothing, his jaw tight with anger. Then a new voice rang out. Clear, strong. "I will speak." The chamber fell silent as Princess Lysera stepped forward. Her presence was undeniable, her eyes shining like stars. "This human has not insulted me," she declared. "He has shown me honesty when all others give me only ceremony. His words are his own, not the will of his people." The nobles shifted uneasily. One sneered, "You defend him too quickly, Princess, perhaps too warmly." Lysera's eyes turned sharp. "Do you accuse your princess of weakness?" The noble bowed his head, silenced. Ethan stood frozen, breath caught in his chest. She was risking her honor, her reputation to defend him. The officials finally dismissed him, warning that further closeness would not be tolerated. Ethan left the chamber with his commander's glare burning into his back. But all he could think about was her voice, clear and strong, standing for him when no one else would. That night, Ethan could not sleep. The starbase hummed quietly around him, machines working in endless rhythm. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. The danger was real. He could be exiled, disgraced, even imprisoned. Yet deep inside, he knew he could not step back now. Not when she had defended him. Not when her eyes still carried that quiet plea to be seen as more than a crown. And somewhere in the depths of the starbase, Lysera lay awake too, staring at the ceiling of her royal chamber. Her heart still echoed with his words, simple but true. Words no noble, no advisor, no suitor had ever dared to speak. Gorgeous, and she knew she wanted to hear them again. The starbase never slept, yet tonight it felt different. The humming of the machines seemed sharper, the voices in the corridors more hurried. Something heavy hung in the air, a tension Ethan Carter could feel deep in his bones. He walked slowly along the narrow passage near the humans' quarters, trying to clear his head, but there was no peace. His commander barely spoke to him now except in clipped orders. Other aides avoided his eyes. The Veyran nobles whispered when he entered a hall. He knew why. His name was on their tongues, tied to rumors of scandal. The princess had defended him once, but the suspicion had not gone away. Instead, it had spread like fire through dry fields. And still, he thought of her. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, her soft blush, her quiet laugh, her eyes shining when she told him he had spoken honestly. He should have been afraid, but instead he felt drawn to her even more. That was when the alarm sounded. The starbase's calm hum turned into sharp sirens. Lights along the walls flickered red. Ethan froze, his heart jumping. A voice rang through the comm system. Security breach detected. All delegates remain in quarters. Repeat, remain in quarters. Ethan turned back toward the humans' rooms, but something pulled at him. A voice in his mind, a fear that was not for himself but for someone else. Lysera. Without thinking, he ran in the opposite direction. The great hall was in chaos. Smoke drifted near the ceiling. Alarms blared and soldiers clashed with shadows that moved too quickly. A faction of Veyran rebels had struck, furious at the idea of peace with humans. Their target was clear, Princess Lysera. Ethan burst into the hall just in time to see her surrounded. 4 rebels in dark armor closed in, blades glowing faintly in their hands. Her guards fought to hold them back, but more enemies poured in from the side corridors. For a heartbeat, Ethan stood frozen. He was unarmed. He was only an aide. This was not his fight. But then Lysera's eyes found him. Even in the chaos, even in the storm of shouts and fire, her gaze locked on his. And he saw the fear there, not for her crown, but for her life. Something inside him moved. His fear broke. His body ran forward before his mind could stop it. Stay away from her, he shouted, throwing himself between the rebels and the princess. The first strike nearly cut him down. A blade of light swept toward his chest, and only his desperate stumble saved him. Pain seared across his arm where it grazed him, but he did not fall. He grabbed a fallen guard's shield, heavy and awkward, and raised it. The rebels laughed, a cruel sound. A human? Protecting her? Ethan gritted his teeth. I don't care who you are. You'll go through me first. The fight was brutal. His shield shook with every strike, sparks flying as glowing blades clashed against alien metal. His arm screamed with pain, but he held on inch by inch. Behind him, Lysera gasped, her voice breaking. Ethan, her saying his name, gave him strength. He pushed forward, slamming the shield into one attacker. The rebel stumbled back, surprised by the force. But there were too many. One blow struck his side and he fell to one knee, vision blurring. He thought it was over. Then Lysera herself stepped forward. She lifted a crystal rod from her robe, striking out with sudden strength. Light burst from it, forcing the rebels back for a moment. Her guards rallied, cutting down 2 of the attackers. Ethan dragged himself upright, shield still in hand, blood running down his arm. He could not stop now, not while she still stood. The last rebel lunged for her faster than the guards could move. Without thinking, Ethan threw himself into the path. The glowing blade pierced his shield and cut across his chest. The pain was blinding, fire tearing through him, but he did not let go. He held the rebel long enough for a guard's spear to drive the attacker to the floor. The hall fell silent except for alarms. The rebels lay scattered, defeated. The guards stood panting, blood and smoke on their armor. And in the center, Ethan fell to the ground, gasping for breath. Lysera was at his side in a heartbeat. She dropped to her knees, her hands trembling as she pressed against his wound. Ethan, no, stay with me. He coughed, blood staining his lips, but he smiled weakly. Princess, are you safe? Her eyes shone with tears. You fool. You protected me with your life. His voice was faint. That's all I wanted. Why? She whispered. He looked at her, his vision dimming. Because you're gorgeous, her breath caught. The word spoken now not as a mistake but as truth hung in the air like a vow. Say it again, she pleaded, her voice breaking. He smiled faintly, his strength slipping. Gorgeous. Then his eyes closed. The hall filled with noise again. Guards shouted for medics. Human officers rushed in, shocked at the sight of one of their own lying bleeding beside the alien princess. But before anyone could pull her away, Lysera's voice rang out, strong and clear. This human saved me. With no weapon, no armor, no thought for himself, He threw his life between me and death. Tell me, what greater loyalty exists? Her words silenced the chamber. Even her mother, the Empress, who arrived moments later, stopped in her tracks. The sight of her daughter holding a wounded human broke through centuries of cold walls. Ethan was carried to the medical bay, still breathing but weak. Lysera never left his side. Hours later, the leaders of both sides gathered. Some still demanded punishment for the rebels. Others called for the talks to end, but the Empress raised her hand, silencing them. My daughter has spoken, she declared. This human has shown us something no treaty, no speech, no ceremony has revealed. Humanity carries a gift, a loyalty born not of politics but of the heart. If peace is to survive, it must be built on such courage. The chamber erupted in agreement. The alliance, once on the edge of collapse, was sealed that day. Ethan woke 2 days later, his chest wrapped in bandages, pain sharp with every breath. The first thing he saw was her. Lysera sat at his bedside, her eyes tired but bright. "You lived," she whispered, relief flooding her voice. He tried to smile. "Disappointed?" She laughed softly through tears. "Never, you saved me, Ethan." He looked at her, his voice weak but steady. "Worth it." She leaned closer, her hand brushing his. "Say it again." He met her gaze, and this time he did not hesitate. "You're gorgeous." Her cheeks glowed pink again, just as they had the first day. But now her smile was brighter, filled with warmth that no crown or robe could hide. News spread across the galaxy. The story of a human aide who had called a princess gorgeous and then risked his life to protect her became legend. For the first time, the Varen Empire and Earth saw each other not as strangers, but as allies bound by courage and honesty. Ethan recovered slowly, but he was never just an aide again. His name became tied to peace, his act a symbol that one person's truth could change the fate of worlds. And as for the princess, she never forgot. In private moments, away from the eyes of courts and armies, she would whisper, "Say it again." And he always did.